Leonia Kurgan, and this is part of a memoir that I'm going to read to you. 1 year after I married Tony in Cape Town, South Africa, I gave birth to our first child, Teresa Ann. Terry, as I always called her, was my golden girl. She slept little, woke up when the sun rose, and followed me wherever I went. 2.5 years later, I gave birth to Laura. The 10 days in the hospital were one of the happiest periods of my life. Laura had a narrow, flower-like face, and I felt calm, quietly joyful, and much needed. She cried little and slept contentedly from meal to meal. Laura was born in December 1960, high season for my husband Tony, who was overwhelmed with taking care of his gold and diamond business. He barely spoke to me that month and paid no attention to our children. Terry missed my undivided attention because of Laura's presence, and I missed Tony's emotional and physical support because he was so preoccupied with his work. One morning, to make myself feel better, I left the children with the housekeeper and went shopping. I found myself in the middle of a long file of marching men. Black men, white policemen half bent over and taking a few steps backwards to gain momentum, were throwing round discs that I thought were live bombs. I was so terrified, I got terrible cramps. And then I realized that they weren't live bombs, they were tear bombs. My eyes watered and everybody around me coughed and spluttered. And the police dispersed the crowd, and I ran to my car and quickly drove home. I sat in our bedroom, trembling with fear. I knew that the political turmoil in South Africa had escalated from March 1960 onwards, that the apartheid government was imposing more and more cruel restrictions on the black people. But it was very different to see black men marching right next to me in my own Cape Town city centre. When Tony came home, I called out to him to come to our bedroom. I heard the clink of the glasses as he poured himself a scotch and a whiskey and soda, and before he came down the long passage to our bedroom, where I sat and trembled. When I said to him, we have to leave South Africa straight away. He said, are you crazy? How can we leave South Africa just like that? After all I've done to build up this business? I nagged and Tony got angry. But the images of marching black men had stirred up old feelings that I had not thought about or remembered since fleeing from Poland as a 4-year-old child during World War II. Then I had no idea why we left our beautiful home, why bombs were falling, why my sister and I had to sleep on suitcases in Bucharest. No one in our family ever spoke of those times. They always spoke of having left, not having escaped from Poland, as if we had willingly immigrated to South Africa. Nobody mentioned that we would have been murdered if we had remained. Tony's family, on the other hand, had immigrated from Lithuania in the 1920s, and Tony lived safely in South Africa during World War II years. Now, I desperately wanted to leave South Africa, just as my family had fled during the German invasion of Poland. But Tony didn't want to leave, nor did he feel any terror from the South African situation. Time passed. I got more used to the frequent violence. I suggested to Tony we try for a boy. Moments after Martin's birth, the doctor lifted up the baby. I saw he had a penis, and the baby's first action after crying was to urinate over me in a big arm. There was something magical about creating a different gender to my own. I noticed that Tony had tears in his eyes when he gazed at his son for the first time. He had no tears in his eyes when he had first seen our daughters. Following Jewish tradition to name babies after deceased relatives, Tony wanted to name the child Israel after his late father. If I did that, I told Tony, I would be following Hitler's orders that all Jewish boys and men, additionally to their given names, have to add the name Israel. I knew I was disappointing Tony, that he had no such fears about our son as I was bringing to this situation. I couldn't call our infant son Israel. That name would so visibly announce to the world that he was Jewish. Please, I said, let's call him Martin Ian as a compromise, and his Hebrew names can be Israel, Michael, and we did that. But I had no ambivalence whether Martin should have a bris. I was still in the hospital and remained in bed after breastfeeding Martin shortly before the procedure. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I handed him to the nurse. My baby was only 8 days old, and already he was about to suffer pain. Women at that time in South Africa were not allowed to attend the circumcision, and I had not previously realized how strongly these patriarchal customs would offend me. A friend had driven me to the hairdresser earlier that day, and then I returned to my hospital bed. I felt very uncomfortable sitting in my bed with my salon-style shining hairdo and all the women around me. I wore a new expensive white nightgown trimmed with royal blue ribbon that I bought out of prior certainty that the baby would be a boy. Tony's brother marched into the room and he asked me to smile, and he clicked the camera and took a photo. He did not bring my baby to me, nor did anybody else. All the men came into the tiny hospital room and congratulated me. I felt irritated that all the men, Tony included, valued baby boys more than baby girls. Annoyed and embarrassed with myself for staying in bed just because that was traditional, I should have attended the bris and be soothing my baby now, not sitting here like a mannequin mother in bed. I should have at least stood up. Later, when I saw how strained and confused I looked in the photo in bed Stephen had taken of me, I tore it up and threw it away. P.S. We stayed in South Africa for another 15 years before Tony finally agreed to immigrate to Los Angeles. Thank you.